Malika Esh learned how to disappear long before she learned how to love. In Seoul she existed in margins, between languages, between cultures, between contracts that always ended too soon. Her passport said one thing, her face suggested another, and her life was a careful balance of proving she belonged without ever asking for permission. As an Afro-Korean fashion buyer on a temporary visa, she understood that nothing here was permanent. Not her job. Not her apartment. And certainly not love. She never meant to fall for Han Min-jun. He was everything she avoided. Quiet power, inherited privilege, a man whose future was decided before he ever made a choice. He carried himself like someone who had never needed to explain himself, never needed to fight for space. When they met at a private fashion showcase, his suit was perfectly pressed, his expression unreadable. He asked about textiles with a polite distance. She answered professionally. That should have been the end. But he came back. Again and again. At first it was questions about fabric sourcing. Then coffee. Then late nights in places where no one knew his name. Min-jun was careful from the beginning. No photos. No public dates. No introductions. He told her plainly that his family would never accept her. That his life was complicated. That she was temporary. And still he chose her. Or at least he chose her in private. Malika told herself it was enough. She told herself love did not need witnesses to be real. When he held her in the dark, whispering promises he could not make in daylight, she believed him. She believed time would soften his fear. She believed patience was a form of devotion. The ring came on a rainy night. They slipped into a discreet jewelry boutique tucked behind a cafe near the river. No assistants. No security. Just soft lights and quiet breathing. Min-jun took her hand himself, measuring her finger with reverence, memorizing it like scripture. The diamond he chose was striking, an emerald cut, clean and intentional, set on a thin platinum band. "It looks like you," he said. She laughed, uneasy, heart racing. He said it was only a promise. Something for the future. Something just for them. She wore it only once. In her apartment. Alone with him. 3 months later his mother found out. The fallout was swift and merciless. Family pressure. Ultimatums. Threats disguised as concern. When Min-jun came to her that night, his face was rigid, his eyes distant. He did not sit. He did not touch her. "This ends now," he said. Malika thought he was joking. Then he called her a mistake. A youthful error. A phase. Something he needed to erase to protect his future. He said it with practiced calm, as if repeating words someone else had written for him. She asked about the ring. He looked away. He left without saying goodbye. Malika cried once. Just once. Then she folded her grief into work and kept moving. That was survival. Months passed. Seasons changed. She rebuilt herself quietly, learning again how to breathe without him. Then the invitation arrived. An engagement party. Luxury hotel. Han Riverview. Her company was listed as a supplier. Her name printed neatly on the guest list, stripped of all history. She considered declining. Instead she went. She wore black. The moment she saw the ring, her chest hollowed. Emerald cut. Thin platinum band. On another woman's hand. The fiancé was graceful, approved, everything Malika had never been allowed to be. Min-jun stood beside her, composed, untouchable, as if he had never whispered promises in the dark. Malika stayed because leaving would have meant surrendering power she had already lost once. During the speeches, the host invited guests to share love stories. Laughter filled the room. Champagne glasses clinked. Then the fiancé lifted her hand, smiling, and asked a simple question. "Min-jun, how did you know my ring size?" Before he could answer, a cousin laughed. "Oh, that," he said. "Didn't you already design that ring for another woman?" Silence detonated. All eyes turned. Min-jun froze. His mother stood, face draining of color. Whispers sharpened into accusation. The fiancé followed the line of sight and saw Malika for the first time. Recognition landed like betrayal. The truth spilled without mercy. His mother collapsed. The engagement unraveled in public. Guests fled. Cameras flashed. Years of control disintegrated in minutes. For the first time, Min-jun could not hide behind silence. Malika did not stay to watch. She walked out knowing one thing with absolute certainty: she had never been a mistake. And now, the man who erased her would have to chase the woman he once tried to forget. Welcome to today's story. If you've enjoyed the story so far, please like and subscribe and tell us in the comments section where you're listening from. We really love hearing from you. Now let's get back to the story. Malika Esh did not look back as she stepped into the night. The hotel doors slid shut behind her with a soft, final hiss, sealing off the chaos she had left inside. The city greeted her the same way it always did: cold air, rushing traffic, neon lights reflecting off rain-slicked pavement. Seoul did not pause for humiliation or heartbreak. It never had. Her heels struck the sidewalk in steady rhythm, each step deliberate, as though slowing down might cause the composure she had borrowed to shatter completely. She counted her breaths the way she had learned to do during her first year here. In for 4. Hold. Out for 4. Control was survival. Only when she reached the corner did her hands begin to shake. She curled her fingers into fists and pressed them against her thighs, grounding herself. The image of the ring would not leave her mind. The way it caught the chandelier light, the way it fit perfectly on another woman's hand. Her ring. Her promise. Reassigned without consent. A bitter laugh escaped her before she could stop it. So this was what erasure looked like when dressed in silk and diamonds. She flagged down a taxi and gave her address in clipped Korean. The driver glanced at her in the mirror, curiosity flickering before professionalism took over. By the time the car pulled into her apartment complex, Malika's face was smooth again, her emotions locked behind bone and discipline. Inside, she kicked off her heels and stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, the quiet pressing in around her. This was where she had loved him. Where she had folded herself small enough to fit into his silence. The memories rose uninvited. Minjun's jacket slung over her chair, his voice murmuring apologies for things he never intended to change. She went to the bathroom and stared at her reflection. "You're still here," she whispered to herself. That had to count for something. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Once. She ignored it. She picked it up on the third vibration not because she wanted to answer but because she wanted proof that she could choose not to. 12 missed calls. One message. "Malika. Please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know it would happen like this." Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a moment the old instinct kicked in. The one that softened, that explained, that forgave before being asked. Then she remembered the way he had made the mistake, as if she were a miscalculation rather than a human being. She set the phone face down. Sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, it was shallow and restless, filled with fractured images. Diamonds dissolving into glass, doors closing just before she reached them, Minjun's face blurred and unreachable. Morning arrived without mercy. Malika dressed for work in silence, muscle memory guiding her hands. She wore a neutral suit, hair pulled back, makeup minimal. Armor. On the subway, a group of women whispered nearby, phones angled just enough for her to catch a headline in Korean. Corporate heir's engagement party ends in scandal. She looked away. At the office the air felt different. Polite smiles lingered a second too long. Conversations hushed when she walked past. Her supervisor called her into his glass-walled office before she could even sit down. "Are you all right?" he asked carefully. "Yes," she said. It was not a lie. She was functioning. He sighed. "The client reached out early this morning. They're requesting a change in point of contact." The words were measured. The meaning was not. "I see," Malika replied. "There's nothing about your performance," he added quickly. "You've been exceptional. But they're citing potential complications." Complications. That was what she was now. She nodded once. "I'll prepare a transition document." As she stood to leave, he hesitated. "Malika, if there's anything I can do." She offered a small, professional smile. "Thank you. I appreciate that." Back at her desk, she worked through the day with surgical focus. Emails. Calls. Approvals. She did not allow herself to think about visas or contracts or how quickly stability could unravel when it had never truly belonged to you. By evening, exhaustion settled deep in her bones. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "Stop calling me," she said before he could speak. "I'm sorry," Minjun said, his voice hoarse. "I didn't plan this. The ring. My cousin didn't know." "You did," Malika cut in. "You knew exactly where that ring came from." Silence stretched. "They forced the engagement," he said finally. "I didn't have a choice." You always had a choice, she replied. You just chose yourself. I was trying to protect my family. And who protected me? Her voice did not rise. That made it sharper. I loved you, he said. The words landed hollow. Love doesn't hide, Malika said. It doesn't erase. And it doesn't hand someone else a promise it made in secret. She ended the call before he could answer. 2 days later, the engagement was officially called off. Statements were released citing health concerns and misunderstandings. The media dissected every frame of the party, every whispered rumor. Online, opinions fractured into spectacle and judgment. Malika, stay offline. On the third day, an email arrived from HR. Regarding contract renewal. She read it once. Then again. The language was polite. Regretful. Final. Her contract would not be renewed. Budget restructuring. Strategic alignment. Temporary means disposable. That night, she sat on the floor of her apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes. Each item she placed inside felt like reclaiming something Minjun had once occupied. Space, air, narrative. She booked a flight. Then another. One door closing did not mean all of them had. There was a knock at her door near midnight. She knew who it was before she stood. Minjun looked different without his tailored perfection. No suit. No driver. Just a man stripped of distance and control. I was wrong, he said. Malika studied him quietly. I know, she replied. I'm choosing you now, he insisted. Publicly. I'll fix this. She shook her head slowly. You don't get to choose me when I finally choose myself. The words settled between them like truth. As she closed the door, Malika understood something fully for the first time. Being erased had not broken her. It had freed her. And somewhere deep inside she knew, this was only the beginning. Malika Esh left Seoul the way she had lived in it. Quietly, deliberately, without spectacle. The airport was crowded with travelers rushing toward futures that felt certain to them. She moved through security with practiced calm, passport in hand, her temporary visa stamped one last time. Temporary. The word no longer stung. It felt honest now. A truth she could finally accept instead of resenting. As the plane lifted off, Seoul shrank beneath her, a sprawl of light and memory. She did not look for Han Minjun's apartment from the air. She did not wonder if he was watching the sky somewhere below. Closure, she had learned, was not something another person could give you. It was a door you closed yourself. Paris greeted her with rain and possibility. The interview she had postponed months earlier turned into 3. Then an offer. A senior buying position with creative autonomy, global travel, and, most importantly, no conditions attached to her existence. No questions about her background disguised as concern. No reminders that she should be grateful for proximity to power. For the first time in years, Malika exhaled fully. She rented a small apartment in the 10th arrondissement, sunlight pouring through tall windows that overlooked a narrow street always humming with life. She worked long hours, learned new rhythms, rebuilt herself stitch by stitch. At night, she walked along the Seine, letting the city remind her that reinvention was not betrayal, it was survival. She did not think about Minjun. Not until his name followed her across continents. The article appeared quietly at first, buried in a business column she only noticed because a colleague forwarded it with a simple message. Is this who I think it is? Han Minjun has resigned. The headline was careful, respectful, but the implications were seismic. A corporate heir stepping down to pursue personal accountability. Industry speculation erupted. Some called it noble. Others called it reckless. Everyone wanted to know why. Malika closed the article without finishing it. Across the world, Minjun stood alone in his childhood home, the walls echoing with everything he had never said out loud. His resignation had detonated like a second scandal. His family was furious. His mother, now recovered enough to deliver words sharper than illness, called his decision humiliating. You threw everything away, she said. For what? For a woman who already left you. For my integrity, Minjun replied. She laughed bitterly. You learned that word too late. He did not argue. For the first time in his life he did not seek approval. Leaving the company did not bring him peace. It stripped him of structure, of identity built on inheritance instead of intention. Without schedules and handlers, he was forced to sit with the consequences of his choices. He replayed the night he ended things with Malika over and over, the way her eyes hardened, the way she did not beg. He understood now that her dignity had terrified him more than his family ever could. He booked a flight to Paris. Not because he believed he deserved her forgiveness. Because there were truths he owed her, even if they changed nothing. Malika sensed him before she saw him. She was leaving a late meeting, coat pulled tight against the evening chill, when a familiar stillness settled behind her. She turned. Minjun stood on the opposite side of the street, hands in his pockets, hair longer, face thinner. He did not approach. He waited, as if granting her the power to decide note or consequence. Her first instinct was anger. Her second was clarity. She crossed the street. "You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. "I know," he replied. "I just needed to tell you I resigned." She searched his face for manipulation. Found none. Only regret that had finally matured into responsibility. "I didn't do it for you," he added quickly. "I did it because I couldn't live with who I was becoming." "That's good," Malika said. "But it doesn't change what happened." "I know." They stood in silence, Paris moving around them, indifferent to old wounds. "I didn't come to ask you back," he said quietly. "I came to tell you I was wrong. Fully. Publicly. Without conditions." Malika nodded. "Then say it." He swallowed. "I was wrong. You were never a mistake." "I was." The words landed cleanly. No defense. No expectation. Something loosened in her chest. Not forgiveness but release. "I accept your apology," she said. "Not because it fixes us. Because it frees me." He closed his eyes briefly, as if absorbing the weight of that mercy. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "In your life. Not mine." She smiled faintly. "Me too." They parted without promises. Weeks passed. Then months. Malika thrived. Her work began appearing in international publications. Her name carried weight independent of anyone else's. She built friendships rooted in mutual respect, not secrecy. Sometimes, late at night, she thought of Minjun, not with longing, but with a distant curiosity reserved for people who had once mattered deeply. Then one evening her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. When she answered, a familiar voice spoke carefully. "Malika. It's Minjun. I wouldn't call unless it mattered." Her heart stilled, not with fear but with instinct. "What is it?" she asked. "There's something you deserve to know," he said. "And I should have told you sooner." The pause stretched, heavy and deliberate. "It's about the ring," he continued. "And what it represented." Malika closed her eyes, sensing that the past had one final truth left to reveal. "What about it?" she asked. Minjun exhaled. "There's more to that night than you ever knew." And in that moment Malika realized. Some stories do not end when you walk away. They wait. For the right truth to finally be told. Malika Esh did not answer Minjun right away. She stood by the tall window of her Paris apartment, watching rain streak down the glass in uneven lines, the city lights blurring into something soft and indistinct. There were lives below her, laughing, arguing, moving forward without hesitation. For a moment she envied their simplicity. "The ring already did enough damage," she said finally. "I don't see how more truth helps anyone." "I know I've lost the right to ask for your time," Minjun replied. His voice carried no urgency, no entitlement. Only gravity. "But this isn't about redemption. It's about honesty. The kind I owed you from the beginning." Malika closed her eyes. She thought of the countless half-truths she had accepted because loving him had felt easier than questioning him. She had learned since then that unanswered questions had a way of haunting even the strongest resolve. "Talk," she said. He exhaled slowly as if steadying himself. "The night we chose the ring," he began, "my mother already knew about you." Malika's breath caught. "She had someone following me," he continued. "I suspected, but I didn't want to believe it. That night after you went home she confronted me. She showed me photos. Records. She told me that if I didn't end things immediately she would make sure you lost your job, your visa, and any chance of working in this industry again." Malika gripped the edge of the window frame. "You still took me to the jeweler," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "Because I thought if I held on to you just a little longer I'd find a way. I was wrong. I was selfish." Silence swallowed the line. "And the engagement?" Malika asked. The ring on her hand. Minjun's voice tightened. The ring was never meant for her. My mother demanded I reuse it. She said it would erase you faster. As if replacing the meaning would make you disappear. The cruelty of it hit Malika like a delayed bruise. So I wasn't just erased, she said. I was overwritten. Yes, he whispered. And I let it happen. When the call ended, Malika remained by the window long after the screen went dark. The truth did not reopen old wounds the way she had feared. Instead it reframed them. What she had once internalized as personal failure now stood revealed as calculated control. She was not unworthy. She had been targeted. The realization ignited something quiet but fierce inside her. Across the ocean, Minjun sat alone in a sparsely furnished apartment he had chosen deliberately. No inherited art, no family legacy clinging to the walls. Telling Malika the truth had not absolved him. It had stripped him further. But for the first time the weight felt honest. He thought the story would end there. It did not. 2 weeks later, Malika received an email marked urgent. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line made her stomach drop. Regarding your former employment in Seoul. The message was brief, clinical, and deeply unsettling. A legal inquiry was underway involving corporate misconduct, coercion, and discrimination tied to foreign workers. Her name had surfaced as a protected witness. Malika read it 3 times. Someone was pulling threads. She called the number listed at the bottom of the email. A woman answered, her tone professional but warm. Ms. Esch, thank you for responding so quickly. I know this may be unexpected. What is this about? Malika asked. We're investigating a pattern of corporate abuse tied to several conglomerate families, the woman said. Your experience aligns with others who were pressured, silenced, or removed to protect reputations. Malika felt a slow chill creep up her spine. Why now? She asked. Because someone came forward, the woman replied. With documents. Malika already knew who. That night Minjun called again, not with explanations but with warning. My family knows the investigation is moving, he said. And they won't stay silent. What does that mean? Malika asked. It means they'll try to discredit you, he replied. They'll say you're bitter. That you planned this. That you used me. Malika laughed softly. Not from humor, from clarity. Let them, she said. I survived being erased. I can survive being questioned. He hesitated. If you testify, it will be public. I've lived in secrecy long enough, she answered. The next morning, Malika walked into a Paris law office and gave a recorded statement that stretched for hours. She spoke about pressure. About silence. About how easily power rewrote narratives while women like her were expected to disappear politely. When she finished, she felt lighter and exposed. News broke slowly, then all at once. Investigations widened. Names surfaced. Executives resigned. Whispers turned into headlines. The Han family denied everything, but the cracks were undeniable now, spreading where polish once hid decay. Malika's name appeared in articles, not as a scandal but as a catalyst. She did not hide. She stood taller. Minjun watched from afar as the empire he had been born into trembled under truths it had buried for decades. His mother did not call. His relatives closed ranks. He was no longer their heir, he was their liability. And yet for the first time he slept without shame. One evening Malika received a message from an unknown number. You think you won. You haven't even seen what we're willing to take. He stared at the screen, pulse steady. Threats meant fear. Fear meant power shifting. She deleted the message and went back to work. But as she turned off her office lights that night, a single thought echoed through her mind with chilling certainty. This story was no longer just about love lost. It was about truth reclaimed. And someone was about to make her pay for it. Malika Esch had learned to recognize fear by the way it disguised itself. Sometimes it came loud, threatening messages, legal warnings wrapped in polished language. Other times it arrived quietly, masquerading as concern. This time it came dressed as an opportunity. The call came on a Tuesday morning, just as Paris was waking into rain. Ms. Esch, this is Director Laurent from Maison Étoile. We're reviewing candidates for our Asia expansion. Your name came highly recommended. Malika paused. Maison Étoile did not cold call. They were recruited with months of vetting. With strategy. With intent. I'm listening, she said carefully. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Prestigious. High level. Too perfect. By the time she hung up, instinct was already whispering. Across the ocean, Han Min-jun felt the shift before he understood it. His former assistant, one of the few people who still spoke to him, sent a single message. "They're moving assets. Quietly. And your name keeps coming up in private meetings." Min-jun exhaled slowly. His family did not fight openly. They suffocated opposition with generosity, with doors that closed without explanation. And Malika, visible now, vocal now, had become inconvenient. He booked another flight to Paris. Not to protect her. To warn her. Malika sensed the storm before it broke. Her email access lagged inexplicably. A background check request she hadn't authorized appeared in her HR portal. A colleague pulled her aside after a meeting, eyes uneasy. "Just be careful," the woman said. "People are asking questions they shouldn't." The past was reaching for her again, but this time Malika did not freeze. She documented everything. Screenshots. Emails. Call logs. Patterns. Power relied on isolation. She refused to give it that luxury. When Min-jun showed up at her door unannounced, she did not look surprised. "They're trying to corner you," he said the moment she let him in. "Professionally. Financially. They'll offer you something big, then take it away and blame you for the fallout." "I know," Malika replied. "They already started." He stared at her. "You're not afraid." "I am," she corrected. "I'm just not silent anymore." He nodded, respect flickering through exhaustion. "There's something else," he said. "My mother met with your former employer. Personally." The room felt suddenly smaller. "She wants to paint you as unstable," Min-jun continued. "Emotionally compromised. A disgruntled former partner seeking revenge." Malika laughed once sharply. "Of course she does. She's good at this," he warned. "She's done it before." Malika met his gaze. "So have women like me. We just didn't have microphones before." That night, Malika made a decision that would change everything. She went public. Not with anger. With precision. An op-ed appeared in a major European publication 2 days later. She did not name names. He didn't need to. She wrote about silence as currency. About how corporations protected bloodlines more fiercely than ethics. About how women of color, immigrants, and temporary workers were treated as collateral damage in the preservation of prestige. She wrote about love too, but not as romance. As leverage. The article went viral within hours. Support poured in. So did scrutiny. Her phone rang nonstop. Interview requests. Panel invitations. Warnings disguised as advice. The line between ally and opportunist blurred fast. And then, the offer from Maison Etoile was rescinded. No explanation. No apology. Just absence. Malika stared at the email, pulse steady. "They think this will break you," Min-jun said quietly, sitting across from her. "It won't," she replied. "But it will reveal them." The investigation escalated. More witnesses came forward. Former employees. Assistants. Women who had been paid to disappear quietly. The pattern was undeniable now. The Han family issued a statement denying retaliation. No one believed them. Still, power did not relinquish itself easily. One evening, Malika returned home to find her apartment door ajar. Nothing was missing. That was the point. On her kitchen counter lay a single object. An emerald-cut diamond. Her ring. No note. No explanation. Just a reminder. Min-jun arrived minutes later, fury barely contained. "This is intimidation," he said. "They're crossing lines." Malika picked up the ring, studying how familiar it still felt against her skin. "They're desperate," she said calmly. "That means we're close." "You shouldn't have to live like this," he said. She looked at him, eyes clear. "Neither should you," she replied. "But here we are." That night Malika did not sleep. She turned the ring over and over in her palm, thinking not of promises but of evidence. Of how symbols could be reclaimed, repurposed. By morning she had a plan. One that would force the truth into daylight. One that would make sure no one could erase her again. And as the sun rose over Paris, Malika understood something with absolute certainty. The people who tried to silence her had forgotten one crucial thing. She was no longer alone. And power, once exposed, does not survive the light unscathed. Malika Esh did not throw the ring away. That alone surprised even her. Instead, she slipped it into a small velvet pouch and placed it in her desk drawer, beside her passport and the folder marked evidence. The ring no longer represented love or loss. It was proof now. A symbol of how easily power tried to rewrite truth, and how recklessly it underestimated memory. The following week moved like a tightening noose. The investigation expanded beyond Seoul. European regulators took interest. Labor rights organizations reached out. Malika found herself sitting across from people who had once been untouchable, watching them choose their words with care for the first time in their lives. Still, the pressure escalated. A sponsorship was quietly withdrawn from a panel she was scheduled to speak on. A landlord reconsidered renewing her lease. An anonymous account began posting carefully edited clips of her interviews, stripping context, stitching doubt into certainty. She's unstable. She's bitter. She planned this. Minjun watched it unfold with a fury that had nowhere to go. They're trying to exhaust you, he said one night, pacing her living room. If they can't discredit the truth, they'll drown you in noise. Malika leaned back against the counter, arms folded, eyes sharp. Then we stopped playing defense. He stopped pacing. What do you mean? I mean, she said slowly, I've been reacting since the night your mother found out about me. I'm done reacting. The plan she had been building quietly now took shape. Malika agreed to one final interview. Live. Unedited. Broadcast internationally. Her legal team warned her. Friends are worried. Minjun went silent when she told him. This will put a target on your back, he said finally. There already is one, she replied. This just forces them to show their hand. The night of the interview, Malika sat beneath studio lights that felt hotter than they should have. The host smiled politely, professionalism barely masking anticipation. Millions were watching. Supporters, skeptics, enemies. She did not start with accusations. She started with herself. She spoke about borders. About loving a place that never promised to love you back. About the quiet compromises people make when survival depends on staying agreeable. Then she spoke about the ring. She held it up to the camera. This was given to me in private, she said calmly. And reassigned in public to erase my existence. That wasn't romance. That was power. The studio was silent. And this, she continued, is not about one family or one man. It's about systems that decide whose pain is inconvenient. She named nothing. But everyone understood everything. Back in Seoul, Han Minjun's mother watched the broadcast from her hospital room, her expression carved from ice. When the camera zoomed in on the ring, something flickered across her face. Not guilt. Recognition. She made a call. In Paris, Malika's phone vibrated the moment the broadcast ended. Unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Minjun read the message over her shoulder, jaw tightening. They're panicking, he said. No, Malika replied softly. They're preparing. That night, a sealed envelope arrived at her door. No return address. Inside was a single document. A marriage contract draft. Her name was listed. Not as a partner. As a liability clause. Minjun went pale as he read it. This was prepared before the engagement, he said. They planned for you. For fallout. Malika felt something settle deep in her chest. Not fear but resolve. Then they planned poorly, she said. She picked up her phone and dialed the investigator handling the case. I have something new, she said. Something they never thought I'd see. Outside, Paris moved on, unaware that a reckoning was accelerating behind closed doors. And somewhere across the ocean, a family built on control realized too late. The woman they tried to erase had just become the one holding the match. The document changed everything. Malika Esh sat at her kitchen table as dawn crept through the windows. The marriage contract spread open like a confession no one intended her to read. Every clause was calculated. Every sentence is designed to contain damage. Her name appeared again and again, not as a person but as a risk. Liability. Reputation exposure. Non-disclosure enforcement. She had never been meant to matter. Only to be managed. Minjun stood across from her, hands braced on the back of a chair, face stripped of all illusion. They prepared for you before they erased you, he said quietly. That means this wasn't fear. It was a strategy. Malika nodded slowly. which means they've done this before. The realization rippled outward, touching every story she had heard over the past weeks. Women who vanished from careers overnight, assistants who signed settlements they barely understood, foreign workers whose visas expired conveniently after disagreements. None of it was a coincidence. By noon, Malika was sitting in a government office surrounded by lawyers, investigators, and advocates. The contract landed on the table like a weapon turned inward. "This proves premeditation," one investigator said, tapping the page. "They anticipated exposure and prepared to neutralize it." Malika folded her hands. "So they knew silence wouldn't last forever. And they planned to buy it," another added grimly. For the first time since the scandal broke, the room felt charged with certainty. Across the ocean, the Han family convened behind closed doors. There were no raised voices. That was never how they operated. Control did not need volume. It needed consensus. The problem was no longer the investigation. It was Malika. "She's unpredictable," one executive said. "And sympathetic." "She's gaining allies," another added. "International ones." Minjun's mother listened without interruption, her face unreadable. "She should have accepted the settlement when she had the chance," someone muttered. "There was no settlement," she replied coolly. "There was silence." "And now?" her brother asked. Her gaze hardened. "Now we remind her who she's dealing with." The next blow came quietly. Malika's banking app froze mid-transaction. Then her phone lit up with alerts. Accounts under review, transfers delayed, compliance checks triggered. Nothing illegal. Just enough friction to destabilize daily life. "They're squeezing," Minjun said when she told him. "I know," she replied. "They want me tired." She refused to be. Glad she spoke. Malika began appearing everywhere. Panels, universities, labor forums. She did not dramatize. She dissected. She spoke about systems, not villains. About how silence was manufactured, not chosen. Each appearance widened the net, drawing out more voices, more stories. The narrative was no longer hers alone. One evening, after a particularly charged forum, Minjun caught up with her outside. "You've become something they can't control," he said. She gave a small smile. "That's what scares them." He hesitated, then said, "They've started leaking things about me. Painting me as unstable. Disloyal. Reckless." She met his eyes. "Are you?" "No," he replied. "But I don't care anymore." She studied him for a long moment. This was not the man who had once called her a mistake. This was someone who had finally learned the cost of silence. "You don't owe me loyalty," she said. "Only the truth." "That's all I have left," he answered. The final fracture came unexpectedly. A former legal advisor to the Han family went public. He released documents, emails, recordings, and among them, a memo titled Contingency Measures. M. The timestamp predated the jewelry store. Predated the breakup. Predated everything. Malika stared at the screen as the realization landed with devastating clarity. The ring had never been a promise. It had been a leash. Minjun read the memo, hands trembling. "They planned to end us before we even began," he said hoarsely. "No," Malika corrected softly. "They planned to control the ending." The media erupted. Investigations doubled. Arrests were whispered about now, not speculated. But as momentum surged, Malika felt it. The instinctual pull that warned her the story was not finished. Power never fell without trying to drag something down with it. That night her phone rang from a blocked number. She answered without hesitation. A woman's voice spoke, calm and familiar. "You should have stayed in your place," Minjun's mother said. "Now you've made yourself unforgettable." Malika's grip tightened on the phone. "Good," she replied. That was the point. The line went dead. Malika stood very still, heart steady, eyes clear. Because she finally understood something that changed the shape of everything. This was no longer about exposure. It was about survival. And the next move would decide who walked away whole. The call from Han Minjun's mother lingered in Malika Esh's mind long after the line went dead. Not because of the threat, but because of the tone. There had been no anger in it. No hysteria. Just certainty. The kind of certainty that came from someone who believed the world still bent in her direction. Malika understood then what Minjun had been trying to tell her all along. This family did not lash out when cornered. They set traps. Quiet ones. Legal ones. Social ones. Traps that looked like exits. The warning came the next morning. Her lead investigator called before sunrise. "Ms. Esch," he said, voice tight, "we've received notice that your immigration status is under review." Malika closed her eyes slowly. Of course it was. "They're claiming inconsistencies in your work history," he continued. "Nothing substantial but enough to delay proceedings. If this escalates, they could try to invalidate your testimony by questioning jurisdiction." "They're trying to move me," Malika said calmly. "If I'm not here, I'm less useful." "Yes," he agreed. "And there's more. We believe they're preparing a civil suit against you." "For what?" she asked. "Defamation," he replied. "Interference with corporate operations. Emotional damages." She almost laughed. Power hated being exposed, but it despised being challenged by someone it believed disposable. When Minjun arrived later that day, she told him everything. "They're coming for you now," he said, pacing. "Personally." "They already were," she replied. "This is just louder." He stopped and faced her. "Then let me help you." She studied him. "How?" He swallowed. "There's one thing they can't spin. One thing they've never let see daylight." Her heart stilled. "What?" "My mother," he said quietly, "isn't the real architect." The air shifted. "There's someone higher," he continued. "Someone who taught her how to do this. Who built the framework before she ever enforced it." Malika frowned. "Who?" Minjun hesitated, then said the name. Malika felt the room tilt. That name wasn't just powerful, it was untouchable. International boards. Political ties. Philanthropy polished to a blinding sheen. If that person was involved, this wasn't just a scandal. It was a war. "I have proof," Minjun added. "But if I release it, there's no going back." Malika stepped closer, her voice steady. "Do you want to go back?" He shook his head once. "No." That night, they worked in silence, assembling timelines, cross-referencing emails, connecting dots that had been deliberately scattered. The picture that emerged was horrifying in its elegance. An entire system designed to identify threats early and neutralize them before they ever learned their worth. Malika wasn't the first. She was just the one who didn't disappear. At 2:17 a.m. her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown sender. "We can make this stop. Leave the country. Sign the agreement. You'll be compensated generously." Attached was a document. Settlement. Confidentiality. Immediate departure. Minjun read it over her shoulder, jaw tightening. "This is their last clean option." Malika stared at the screen. She thought of the women who had messaged her quietly. Their careers ended without explanation. Of the way she had once folded herself small just to be loved. She deleted the message. "No," she said. The next day everything accelerated. The civil suit was filed. Her visa review became official. Media outlets began receiving anonymous tips questioning her credibility. And then, one final move. An arrest warrant was issued in Seoul. For Minjun. Corporate obstruction. Evidence tampering. Charges designed not to stick, but to intimidate. Malika felt something fracture inside her chest. "They're punishing you for choosing truth," she said. Minjun met her gaze, unflinching. "I chose it a long time ago. I just didn't know how to live with it until now." He took her hands. "If I turn myself in," he said, "they'll assume you'll retreat. That you'll protect yourself." "And if I don't?" she asked. "Then," he said softly, "you become the one thing they can't predict." That night, Malika stood alone on her balcony, Paris humming below, the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She had a choice. Protect herself, and let the system survive. Or risk everything and burn it open. Her phone buzzed again. A news alert. Breaking. Han Minjun voluntarily returns to Seoul to cooperate with authorities. Malika's breath caught. Across the ocean, Minjun walked into a future that might destroy him. And in that moment Malika knew. The final act was coming. And this time the truth would not be asked politely. It would be forced into the light. The news alert burned itself into Malika Esch's chest. Han Minjun voluntarily returns to Seoul to cooperate with authorities. For a long moment she could not breathe. Paris blurred beyond the balcony railing, the city's steady pulse mocking the chaos tightening inside her. Minjun had warned her. He had chosen this. Still, knowing did nothing to soften the weight of it. He had walked back into the mouth of the machine that raised him, unarmed, unprotected, and unapproved. They wanted her to be afraid. They wanted her silent. They would get neither. Within hours, Minjun's arrest dominated headlines across Asia and Europe. The language was careful, almost polite. Question. Top rating. Procedural. But Malika knew better. This was punishment dressed as a process. A warning to anyone watching. Her phone rang non-stop. Lawyers. Journalists. Advocates. And then, one call she had been waiting for. "We're moving faster now," the investigator said. Public pressure changed the timeline. "We're scheduling a joint hearing. International." Malika closed her eyes. "Good. There's a risk," he added. "They'll attack your credibility harder than ever." "They already have," she replied. "This time I'll be ready." In Seoul, Minjun sat in a stark interrogation room, hands folded, expression calm. The man across from him leafed through documents with deliberate slowness. "You understand the severity of what you're doing," the officer said. "Yes," Minjun replied. "You're implicating powerful people." "I know. And you're willing to accept the consequences?" Minjun thought of Malika standing alone on a Paris balcony, refusing to disappear. "Yes," he said. "I already have." Back in Paris, Malika prepared for the most dangerous thing she had ever done. Not confrontation, not exposure, but testimony. The night before the hearing she barely slept. Not from fear but from clarity. Every choice she had made led here. Every compromise she had swallowed. Every time she had been told she was temporary, replaceable, a mistake. She was done accepting that story. The hearing was broadcast live. Screens across the world split between Seoul and Paris, between polished officials and a woman who refused to lower her eyes. Malika spoke slowly. She spoke carefully. She spoke truth. She detailed how power identified threats early. Women who knew too much, loved too deeply, or refused to stay quiet. She explained how love had been used as leverage, how her existence had been reduced to a clause in a contract before she ever knew she was being watched. And then, she revealed the final document. The one Minjun had risked everything to secure. A sealed memo. Older than the ring. Older than their relationship. Proof that her erasure had been planned long before she was called a mistake. The room went silent. In Seoul, Minjun lifted his head as the document appeared on screen. For the first time since his arrest, he smiled faintly. The machine faltered. Not collapsed. Faltered. That was enough. The hearing was adjourned. Investigations expanded again. Names were withheld for now. The world buzzed with speculation, outrage, hope. Malika stepped away from the podium, legs trembling, heart steady. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions she did not answer. Because the truth was already louder than anything she could say. That night she finally allowed herself to cry. Not for Minjun. For herself. For the woman who survived being erased. For the one who stood in the light anyway. Her phone buzzed once more. A message. From Minjun. "No matter what happens next, thank you for not letting them erase you." Malika pressed the phone to her chest. She did not know what would happen to him. She did not know how far this would go. She only knew this. The story was no longer theirs to control. And somewhere in the shadows, power was regrouping, waiting, planning its next move. Because systems do not die quietly. They fight. In this story, this was far from over. Thank you so much for making it this far. If you enjoyed today's story, we'd love to hear what you thought. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can enjoy more stories like this.